so let's see. I think we are. Yes, we are recording now. Okay. So yes, this is modeling a decision tree for new businesses and for startups. And so we'll just jump right into it. Some of this stuff you've seen, but some of this stuff goes back quite a ways. And so I'm not sure if you, Edgar, and Christian, were there or not when we went through this. So what this is it looks pretty complicated, and it's not as bad maybe as it looks. But these are sort of the steps of a decision tree to start building a new business. And the basic idea is to build a go or no go kind of a strategy, so that if you hit a no go step, you simply go right back where you were, and you try to come at the problem another way and see if you can fix that problem. So the first thing that we have here is you need to determine the motivation to go into business. There are a lot of people who have different motivations, but just because it's so hard to succeed, it's a good idea to really examine if that's who you are. Both of you are in business, and of course, John's been in several businesses too. And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs just kind of know that they want to run their own lives and do things kind of on their own. And so sometimes it's not really, they don't really think too much about that. But by the same token, as we've been talking about personality and job fit, those kinds of issues, not everybody is really suited for business. There are some people who inherit businesses that are not suited to be good managers as the business grows. And part of the reason that businesses fail is that they don't learn to manage their people very well as they go forward. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So we're not going to, I have another whole separate model that helps you evaluate what you need to get out of the business in order to satisfy your personal financial situation, as well as the way you want to live, and how much time you want to spend with your family, and how important certain aspects of your life are to you, versus a 110% I'm just going to work until I drop kind of mentality, or until I get rich mentality. And then you end up losing your, you wake up 10 years, 20 years later, and you realize that your life is going past you and you didn't get a lot of the other things done. And so that requires a lot of, work lifestyle balance. So, but that's another subject. So we're assuming in this model that everybody has jumped right to number 2. Now, the interesting thing about number 2 is identify your niche market, and just this whole concept of looking at market. You're not going to be surprised that I'm bringing this up first. I'm sorry that Ed Lasik isn't here today. He may show up in a little bit, but that is not the way he would look at it. And he's come around a little bit since we've been working together. But most of the time, people kind of look at it like, okay, what are you going to make, and how much are you going to sell? And now let's start looking at the expenses and the physical plant, and buying the machinery to build stuff, or programmers, or whatever the case is. Let's just kind of start working on this business. And they come at it with the idea of building the administrative stuff first before they ever consider whether or not the business that they're going to start is going to be successful. Or they just skip right past that, and they don't really think about it very much. They just start. They just assume that their idea is a good one, and they haven't really done any research to determine how good it is. Or it may be a good idea, and it might succeed with one person. But if you're expecting to make $1 million, and you want to, you need to hire employees, and you have to grow to a certain size in order to be able to protect your market, you may find that it's not going to work at all because you weren't properly funded. So it makes more sense to me to take a good solid look at the marketing issues first. So to identify a market niche, first you want to make sure you've got expertise in the industry. If you don't understand the industry, then you have quite a lot of work to do in order to be able to figure the industry out. Some industries are easier to understand than others, but if you're going to manufacture something, for instance, and you don't understand manufacturing very well, you are in a world of hurt before you even start, because the complexity of most manufacturing processes today is so complicated and requires so much expertise and experience that it'll take you years and years to get there. Better to go to work for a manufacturer and learn that how to manufacture than to just try and learn it. Now, of course, you've got people who are production engineers and they come out of school. They have a lot to learn too, but they have spent 4 or 5 years trying to understand how to make things. But you still have the issue of, okay, so maybe we know how to make things, but do we understand the industry we're going to be in? Are you going to do things in metal, or are you going to do construction? Are you going to do plastics, the plastics industry? Are you going to do bottling, food preparation? What is it you're going to do? You still need to know your industry pretty well too. So it makes a lot of sense to try and spend some time in an industry, or recognize that you really have to spend a huge amount of time getting to understand what that industry is. The second step is you have to combine that with the marketing, positioning, and emplacement. And we've talked a lot about that. I'm going to talk about that from a different perspective a little bit today. But assuming that you've got just right out of the bat, you're going, okay, I understand my niche. I have competence in able to build some of these products. We've studied our customers, et cetera. And so just broadly speaking, before we do a lot of market research, et cetera, broadly speaking, let's just kind of put a pencil to it and do what I call a quick dollar feasibility, or a quick monetary feasibility. And that is done literally just with a paper and pen, or with a calculator, or a spreadsheet. And you just go through and look at, okay, what is the likely real guess, the likely development and capital investment for me to get this going? So if it's something like Edgar's been working on, you've got to be able to integrate some software pieces in order to be able to make that work. And then conceptually, he had to develop the products as well. He brought some expertise from the banking business into his business, which is part of his income stream. And so, he had some of that experience already. The question then is, okay, well, how much do I need to live on? That's part of the capital investment, et cetera. Second, you want to think about the pricing and expense guesses. By pricing on one, these are two distinct things. Pricing on one hand is how much can we get for the product, service that we're offering. And you need to have a sense for what the competition out there is doing in terms of pricing and how much they're getting for that product. You may be able to get more if you can do a better job. You may have to get less because you're trying to break into a market and get business. So just think that through. What would a target price be? $100, $500, $5,000, some kind of a basic thumbnail now idea of what is that going to be, and therefore what kind of revenue can we expect. In order to get revenue, you have to go back to some of your marketing guesses and say, well, we think we can sell 5 of these, or we think we can sell 5 million of these. And you just take a look at your pricing, put it with your unit volume, your sales, come up with a sales forecast approximately out of the box. How many dollars is it going to be? How many dollars can I generate in X period of time? And then your second is really an expense guess. How much is rent going to be? I've got to have a telephone I have to have computers. I need to have potentially all the networking that means and all the internet stuff. Uh, you know, now if you went to John's office, he'd provide all that for you, so you wouldn't even have to worry about that. So that's a service that John offers as a bonus, really, that you don't have to worry about that piece of it if you happen to be renting an office from John. So that's one of his differentiators. So you want to take a look at that, utilities and all of the other kinds of things that can surprise you, and there will be surprises. You may not realize that you have to pay for a license. You've got to have a license and that kind of stuff. And you may forget about the fact that you need to buy packaging. And packaging in small quantities can be extremely expensive. So you want to try and think of all of your expenses just as you think of all of the cost of developing your product. And then third, you want to look at your personal and business financial expectations. Your business expectations are going to be something akin to, well, it looks like I can make a certain amount of money if I can achieve a certain volume. Yeah. So if we can get to that certain volume, then the question is, how much can we siphon off for personal use? Now, everybody, you've all heard these interesting stories of people sleeping in the back room of their office and or maybe out of a car in order to get started. There are all kinds of things that business people do to start up and try and minimize their expenses, but you do want to be reasonable about that. Sometimes that's not even a consideration. And as you get rolling, you start utilizing maybe the same checking account as your personal stuff. And that can end up being a total disaster. And you want to keep your personal expenses completely separate from your business expenses anyway. So you need, separate accounts. And you don't want to get used to utilizing an account that has all of your money from your business in it. And the reason for that is cash flow. Many times you will get some big checks in, you'll look like you got a fat account, and you're going, well, I'm going to go out and buy that new appliance I needed, or I'm going to go out and have a nice trip or whatever. But you're not realizing that that's not profit, that's just cash flow. That's just cash that happens to be sitting in your business account. That is not something that you should be accessing for your personal use. So you want to look at your business and see what those financial expectations are, and then also have a sense for what it's going to take for your personal in order to keep you in a minimal lifestyle, say, whatever that might be. And that could be very low or it could be pretty high. There are people who start businesses who have pretty good personal needs, and they need to be able to take out a pretty good sized number out of their business every month in order to survive. That's okay. You want to plug those in and take a look at that. Now, what happens is that if that doesn't look like it's going to work for you, you go through these 3 steps, then that just funnels right back up, and you're back up here at the feasibility again. And that's where you begin doing what if scenarios in your on your spreadsheet, if you are using a spreadsheet, or you take one napkin and you set it aside and you start another napkin and you kind of change some of the volume predictions, etc., so that you can get an idea, does this make any sense at all? Now you can go through just this many steps right here, and you can probably kibosh 60 or 80% of the ideas that you might have simply by trying to put numbers to it early in the game and realizing I'm not going to be able to sell enough, or it'd be very difficult to sell enough of this particular product in order to be able to make a business out of it. Or if it's a brand new product that you don't even know what the market acceptance is, you're going to have to accept a substantial amount of risk, which means you may have to have money in reserve in order to stay in business a little longer, because it's going to take a lot longer to be able to go into business or to get the business. And you may also, need to have a substantial amount of money put aside for marketing activities in order to create the market that you hope that you're going to be able to build. So those are sort of the beginning pieces to this. Now, if you get all of that done, then you get to go over to number 4. In other words, you get a yes, a go on each one of these preliminary pieces. And then when you get over to number 4, we're really looking at, okay, we need to look at the market acceptance again in a little more detailed way. And so how do we do that? Now I'm going to skip here past. I'm going to start talking about market acceptance and talk a little bit about how you might get to this market acceptance place. We had talked a little bit, and you may have seen this slide already, but when I put together a piece that the 3 consulting amigos did on what businesses would be good to start in the 2020s, I built these slides. And this is kind of the idea. We have talked a little bit about this, so I'm going to breeze past this. These are the things that I feel like are a great place to start a business today. If you want to just start something that's fairly small, it doesn't have to be small volume, but it might be small in terms of buildings, employees, etc. First, you want to build something that is as digital as you can possibly build it. It needs to be so digital that you're almost thinking digital first, and other products fall in after the digital support. It's sort of like rethinking a whole industry, Airbnb kind of thinking, or Grubhub kind of thinking. How do we use technology to completely change the paradigm and therefore enter a new market and create a new business, a new marketing niche, actually. The other thing is consider doing something locally. You're going to hear me talk more about niche marketing, and local is part of the niche market. We'll talk more about that. But doing something local keeps you out of the jaws of the big businesses and big industries. Distribution, depending on what your product is, you want to consider that as a digital alternative, an internet alternative, not necessarily Amazon, but you have to consider Amazon if you're reselling something or if you're manufacturing something. Those are all very key pieces that require a lot of analysis. And finally, look at things that are low investment. There are a lot of things that are low investment. And I think I mentioned this to you before. I think I've started 5 or 6 businesses, and the most I ever invested was $20,000 in today's money. So it's not a huge amount of money. Most businesses I started with nothing, just an order, something like that, or used a little cash flow from one business to feed the other business. So it just, didn't take very much to get most of the Red Fusion, which ended up having 12 people. I don't think we put more than 2 computers in the investment pool. That's all we invested in, was 2 computers. We were able to start selling things almost immediately, and ended up with an office during the first year that we were in business. So it can be done. It doesn't require having a lot of money. And that is not to say that that's what you should do all the time. It's just that is what seems to be the trend for some of the new kinds of businesses. Now, having said that, there are a lot of great, I guess I'll call them traditional businesses in areas that other people don't want to do. Christian's business is one like that. It's like there are a lot of folks who just don't want to do that. And if you do it, you can find that you can do very, very well, because There's not a lot of competition. So let's say I talked through each one of these things here. And I want to kind of get to the next slide, so we'll get there. Okay, so we talked about digital, and I think I've talked through these two. You all know what digital is, because we've talked about it so many times, but I'm really talking about transformational digital on one hand, but then I'm also talking about utilizing digital even in a traditional business. By that I mean software, starting off with software, utilizing bookkeeping systems that are going to work for you, that it will give you a lot of management reports, give you a lot of direction in where your business is going, how it's performing, and that kind of thing. And I'm also talking about, a huge number of terrific online cloud-based systems that can be put together and create what you need. It won't be seamless necessarily from one system to the next, but you can do an awful lot just thinking about that. In other words, what I'm suggesting is if you want to be a plumber, don't forget about how you're going to do billing, and don't forget about how you're going to do customer service for your customers. That's all of that has to be thought of in terms of the digital idea, because if you start off doing something manually, you just have to catch up later on. And in today's world, it could actually cost you your business. Then we want to put this micro niche over the top of it. Now we're going to talk about that micro niche quite a bit. And then again, no specific location. If you don't have to have an office, don't have it. Sorry, John. But if you do have to have an office, having one of John's offices is a good idea because he takes care of all of the infrastructure for digital and so forth. And so that's terrific. And, they're smallish, so you don't have to have a big office and put a couple of people in. Try not to have a business that has lots of employees. Those are tough to run. The product needs to be the brand. That's something we'll have to talk more about to really understand. But the idea here is that your brand needs to really come out and be understood as the product and the product as the brand. And that's because you have to battle all of these good brands that are online and available to everybody all the time. And if you can, build a business that is, while it's in one niche, has multiple revenue streams. Okay, so when we look at the micro niche and it's customer centered, what we want to do is have a juxtaposition now of your company capabilities. That is, what can you do for a customer? What can you build? How can you deliver it? What is it going to be that your company does that is an expert, that you're an expert at, so that you can be considered an expert and an authority in your business. And in between that, it's, well, what does the customer actually need or desire? These are the issues that you have to satisfy in this marketing step, where we're saying, do you have a product that will gain market acceptance? And so these are the things we want to look at in order to be able to determine that. How do we do that? Well, one of the things that we do is we recognize that the customer has needs and desires, and that is really partially and quickly explained by Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is kind of an old psychological view of the basic stuff, which starts at the very bottom. So when you go down to the bottom, you need physiological things: food, water, and shelter are the basic things. Next, we need safety. The interesting thing about safety is that we've learned that for those companies trying to exist in some of these cities where they've had riots, they have had this very bottom need taken away from them. It's very tough psychologically. and it's very hard to do business if, in fact, you are affected at a safety level where you are going to be morally compromised, or your health would be compromised, or your body is going to be compromised in some way. That is why having protection and being in a neighborhood that is not dangerous is so critical to most businesses. They have to figure out how to solve these two things for every single person, and every business can, in fact, appeal to these basic needs. There's a huge industry in security services because they're dealing with this number 2 level need. Belonging. And of course, that has to do with family and friends and so forth. There are lots of products that help us feel better about belonging. And so, that's another thing that people need, and that's third on the hierarchy. Then you finally get to self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respecting others, and being respected. So we get more into the that could be a long discussion, but this includes everything from the jewelry that you're able to purchase to the number of pats on the back that you get at your local service club, to awards in your industry for excellence. All of those kinds of things are where esteem is built, as well as many other relationships. But there are also a lot of products that are out there that satisfy that. And finally, the self-actualization, which is really the higher level. You've got all the basic stuff. You've got the car you want. You feel safe. You've got a good family and a lot of friendships, and you feel good about yourself because you've done well, or people think that you've done well and that you're living well. And then on top of that, you'd like to be able to have some mortality. That's very difficult to get. But creativity, spontaneity, and lack of prejudice, and acceptance of facts. And so when you get to this self-actualization thing, you do reach a level of sort of reality, which is interesting. There are some products here, but most of the products that we talk about, all the products that we talk about, will satisfy in some way or another, even though it may feel distant, will satisfy one of these hierarchy of needs. So when you start thinking about products that you're going to develop for your new business, you have to think about what problem are we solving, what need are we satisfying, or what desire are we fulfilling. And of course, those are from the bottom are the needs and the top are desires. Okay, we've seen this slide. I'm just going to run through it again because this has to do with kind of proving your market acceptance, and doing so when you have a very small niche is always the very best way to do this. And we've talked about the general industry, the geographic, and all these layers of specialization. Specialization and stickiness, specification and stickiness. These are all in my book, by the way, if you want a longer dialogue about it. Referrals and symbiotic differences, authenticity and relationship. And these begin to be all of the ways that we create a very, very small niche for ourselves. And you want to ask yourself, how does your product break down in terms of these sort of key issues in terms of developing a smaller and smaller niche. Of course, we've also defined a market, and this is just another look from what we just looked at. You have your niche industry, and in Edgar's case, we might say the niche industry is restaurants, and then further it's Mexican restaurants, and further it might be Spanish-speaking owners of Mexican restaurants. Geographic, obviously that is geographic. Edgar's geography might be Inland Empire, moving into a little bit of Southern California, LA, Orange County as time goes on. Distribution control is another way to define your market. Um, Distribution control in this particular case here, I think the example was a Jaguar specialty repair shop. And in this particular case, Jaguar controlled the distribution in Southern California, and therefore he had no competition. Authenticity, that comes from proper brand, from people recognizing that you have the real thing. That's, of course, unless you're trying to do a copy. If you're Levi's, you have authenticity. If you're Lee, you've kind of got your own authenticity. But if you're some other company making jeans, you don't have any authenticity there. Relationship is one of the strongest pieces, and that is, have you developed a relationship kind of business as opposed to transactional? Again, we've gone through some of these pieces. These are sort of reminders. And therefore, when we do market positioning, and especially for new products, and as you're thinking through the kinds of products that you're going to not only start with, but that you'll add over time, because you have to keep doing this. Keep in mind, and I've said this many times before, but businesses, one of the top consultants of all time said businesses are in business for just two reasons: to create a customer, to get a customer, and to innovate. And that's it. Those are the only two things businesses have to do. And of those two businesses, the two things you have to do, there are many other things you have to do, but they all cost money. The only thing that creates money are getting a customer and innovating. And so when you're thinking about that, the first thing we look at is customer. By the way, I don't know what this little red guy's doing hanging off on the side there, so don't let that distract you.
Hey, Ron, can you repeat that part where you said what was the most important for the business, or what the business is looking out for?
Yeah, the most important thing of the only purpose of a business is to get a customer and innovate. Those are the two things that you do. Everything else is just a cost. Now that sounds a lot different than the way a lot of people put a business together. They go through and they put all their costs together first and think they have a business, but they don't have a business until they've got a customer and they're able to innovate. Because you won't be in business if you can't do those two things. You'll just be generating, that sounds like government to me. They don't really have customers. They don't really do any innovation. All they do is have costs. And unfortunately, they use our money. So that's about it. So if we look then at the customer and we identify the types of customers in the niche market, what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at our core competencies, whether it would be, I don't know, a coal mine or software or menu services and credit card processing services that Edgar is doing, or cleaning up spills like Christian does, those are all competencies, and every business has people with competencies. The businesses where there are not deep competencies have a hard time maintaining their niche. And so even if you do something that's similar to somebody else, you want to try to develop a differentiator and innovate. You could be somebody out at a farmer's market selling flowers and have 30 people selling flowers. So now the question is, okay, it's pretty easy to figure out how to stand behind, stand in the booth and answer people's questions or show them flowers or take their money. That's easy to do. You can teach somebody how to do that in about 20, 30 minutes, and they're good to go. The question is, how did you differentiate that product so that people would actually come to yours instead of the other 13? Well, what you do there, obviously, is you specialize in a certain kind of flower. You make sure that it's fresher, cheaper, or better quality, or you have some sort of a brand that they that they believe in. I'm not a flower guy, but strangely, I went online and I decided to buy some bulbs. And who did I go to? I went to Gurney's, which is the one of the oldest uh, seed and bulb companies in the United States. Why? Well, because I bought some bad ones last year from Home Depot, and they shriveled and they never came up. So I decided I'm just going to go to the best. And in doing so, I spent way more money than I ever would have spent before, because they enamored me, on the website with what they were doing. And they were going to be here in 7 days. And lo and behold, they showed up. And so, even though I never bought flowers or bulbs or seeds online from anybody before, somehow in the back of my mind, I knew that label Gurney was a good quality one. And they differentiated themselves in terms of quality by being in business for a long time and having a good reputation. So then the third one is the competition. So when we take a look at this space, now think of this here as an actual market niche. You have certain competencies. Part of those competencies will overlap with your customers. And so this area right here is the area that you're going to be able to satisfy your customer need. Now, you've got competition that also has some of their core competencies overlap with yours, and some of what they do overlaps with your customers. But what you've got is this area here that is specifically your kind of competency, and you get that business. You fight with your competition over that little overlap where all three things come together. So the ideal thing for you to do is to own this piece of property here, own this piece of the market. And if you own that piece of the market, then you can feel comfortable, or if you think you can achieve that, you can feel a lot more comfortable about starting a business, because you've got a real understanding of what your market's going to be and what you're going to do in that market and what it is that those customers are going to buy from you. And going through this exercise really helps you to clarify those things. Okay, so I'm going to shift over now. This happens to be the business plan that we've used before that came from Wells Fargo that we got from Edgar. And that has a place here as a standard format to do that. Now I'm going to show you that I've just reproduced on this spreadsheet with a few more steps. Each one of these, 1, 2, etc., the subcategories, sub things to do, this quick ballpark feasibility. And so if you get through the feasibility, you've got a go or no go. If you get to, we are in market acceptance right now. And so when you get to the market acceptance, this is where once you kind of build that and you come up with assumptions. Now these are assumptions. You're still doing discovery. You want to describe, of course you would spell it better than I did. You want now it's going out, we're going downhill now. You want to describe and build a comprehensive list of the competing products and companies. So that can be a chore. This is where you start getting into, I haven't, have I shared this with you? Can you see this? Can you see the spreadsheet?
Yeah, we see it.
You can see it. Okay, good. So you want to you want to look at all your competition, and it's so easy to do now because most kinds of companies you'll find on the internet, and you can have a nice, build a pretty complete profile. Generally, look at all their products and services, and be able to build a comprehensive list of what all those are. And then when you think that you have built something unique, you'll find that it's not as unique as you thought it was. And this is the work that it takes to really roll up your sleeves, dig into it, and get the facts and find out who's actually out there who's selling that blue widget with a twist, just like your blue widget with a twist. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't enter the market. It just means that now you understand that there is going to be competition, or there's not. And hopefully you run into, you have trouble finding companies that have your product. And be sure that when you're describing the product in your searches that you're using the kind of terms that a customer would use to find it, as opposed to what an industry group might use, because sometimes a customer describes a product much differently. Like in the hardware business, if you happen to be looking for screws, there's probably a pretty small chance that you know how to describe it in the way that they describe a screw. I've been looking for them recently and realized I had something to learn. Then you want to determine the characteristics of each one of these products so that you can compare that to the characteristics of your own product. And this is the place where you can utilize the value diamond and take a look at whether or not they are going to be highly competitive in each of the 4 areas: quality, price, service, and brand. Recognizing that you may have a big hurdle in brands to overcome, but you need to know that up front, because that can be overcome, but it costs more money than if you didn't have to develop a brand. No problem. You just need to know that you're going to have the money to be able to do that, or your chances of success will be lowered quite a bit. Then when we get through the market acceptance and you realize that, okay, it looks as though we're going to have a good shot at this, we want to do some research to verify that our assumptions are true. So, and in a way, 4 and 5 can kind of go together. But you want to actually get down here to the number of prospects that are in your niche. Now, that's used to be a very difficult thing to do, and was impossible for small business to do, because market reports didn't get down to very small niches. There's a huge number of product categories in the census. Those are called the county census numbers, and you can tell a lot about a lot of things when you get into those numbers and you identify different product lines and different groupings of industries and sub-industries, et cetera. But when you get down to the, blue widget, with the twirl, they're not going to have that. And so you're going to have to make some big assumptions. You do that by pulling the research from your internet search and trying to identify really how many prospects here. Although we're not looking at products here, we're looking for customers. So identifying your customer is really important. And you also have to think about, will customers use this product for something different than I expect that they will? And a lot of times they do. The reason I brought up the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is that people will typically describe their customers' use of a product in, very basic ways, like why does this woman buy a certain cleaner for their kitchen? And you could easily say, well, it's because they want to clean their countertops, or they have to have a cleaner of some kind. But that's not the real reason. The reason that they pick a particular one is because of the color, of the fragrance, of the shape of the bottle. And once they got it, did it do what they expected it to do? Was it easy to use? Was it caustic? Was it natural? You have all of these characteristics to look at. And so the answer is your customer is going to be a customer that might want your organic product because it's not caustic. Maybe it's an orange type of product that's made out of orange peels or whatever they make those orange cleaners out of. And that appeals to that customer because she feels as though it's better for the environment. And so what you're appealing to here is one of these levels on Maslow's hierarchy. It's not simply she wants to clean the counter. And if you're going to compete based on she wants to clean the counter, then you better have a really, really cheap product, because you're going to have to bribe her to buy that product in order to be able to get her to buy it, because she's going to buy one of these other products instead. There's an awful lot of competition there, so you have to stand out. So that's why you have to look for that deeper meaning. So you identify how many of those customers are out there. In that particular field, you may say, well, women buy 85% of the cleaning products. So that means that there are hundreds of millions or millions and millions of customers. But that doesn't necessarily make the niche. The niche really is boiled down to those people who really are, say, deep eco, deep green people, the ones that will absolutely not buy anything. They'll buy simple green, for instance, excuse me, because it's a good, strong cleaner and because they think that it is green, and therefore they'll buy it. And so now you don't have tens of millions or say 120 million. You now only have 30,000 or 100,000. It's a whole different level of customer. From that, then you need to estimate what percentage of the market share can you get. Now we're looking at something you likely wouldn't go into a cleaning business, but if you happen to be in Edgar's business, you can take a look at the market share very easily by simply going to a list company and finding out how many Mexican restaurants there are in Southern California, break that down by county or city, and then you can identify them. You can even break them down by size. You know, if Edgar felt like his customer was doing $2 million or less per year, then he could take a look at how many of those companies are doing $2 million $2 million per year or less, and then identify them. And he might find out that there are 180 restaurants in the Inland Empire. Have you done that yet, Edgar?
I have done something similar to that, but I feel like what you taught us is to identify my niche market all the way down to even the type of, like I've done that identification and I started looking around, not using real statistics, but other than just comparing to other restaurants.
Yeah.
Who is my target audience? And there's way more people than I can actually serve based on what I'm trying to do. That might take my product the moment that I talk to them. So we tested that by going out and asking, and I think our target market acceptance was way better than what we can accomplish, which kind of created the concept that I don't think we're going to struggle getting customers.
Yeah, and that's fabulous to know. But you have another problem now, because if you have too many customers and you can't go get a big market share of that, you're going to open up the market to competition. And so you can do that. You can fix that two ways, or maybe more, but at least two that I'm thinking of. One is you can make your niche even smaller. Now, you can't just completely invent it, but you can think through your niche by saying, okay, I'm going to do only Spanish speaking, and therefore my advertising is going to be in Spanish, and my website's going to be in Spanish, and I'm going to do everything I can to differentiate so that we capture that market. Now, then you would say, okay, can we become the biggest player in that market. And it's, you know, for the reasons that I've talked about in PIMS that you'll recall, it's important to be able to be the biggest player if you want to be really successful and stable. And so you want to achieve at least a 30% market share in order to do that. And so if you've got 130 restaurants out there in whichever niche you have, and you can pick up 50 or 60 of those restaurants, there's a pretty good chance you're going to be able to continue to grow that and gain more market share, and that you'll be to the market faster than the competition will figure out that they could be in that market too. Because what will happen is people are going to go to regular restaurants. They're not going to compete with you if you're Spanish only, right? That's not going to be a natural place for them to go.
That is exactly what we've done. We are focused almost 100% Spanish speakers, at least 700,000 in revenue, close to $1 million, more than one location.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So what I'm going to do is, in the next 1 or 2 meetings, I'm going to show you how to get exact numbers on that. I can't get to the Spanish speaking, but we can certainly get to the Mexican restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know how we do the Spanish speaking part, but we can think about that. So, but my point is that now that you get to this place where you've estimated the market and you've estimated what's a good market share, you now have some kind of a goal to reach for, and then you can put money against that. You can say, here's my product pricing, here's how many restaurants there are, here's how many I'm going to get, and you simply multiply that one by the other. And now you can say, okay, my business is going to be, you know, X hundreds of thousands of dollars within a reasonable period of time. Now you're there. Now you've been able to kind of get past the idea of, okay, the market's accepted me, but now I want to build this into a financial reality so that I can see if we can make money doing it. And so you calculate the units sold, and then you plug that into a break-even model so that you can see when you break even, and then you can take that and put that into a full financial pro forma so that you can actually calculate what kind of expenses and profit you're going to have. And then you can forecast that out month by month or year by year. And so if you can't get those numbers to work, you go back to 2. Now that's going all the way back to the beginning. But you see what's happened here is you didn't get the market right. You decided to go into the cleaning business, and you've invented some sort of a cleaner, and you've gone through all of this stuff, and you've realized that you're only going to get 0.1% of the marketplace, and you don't have a way to distribute to that because the market is the whole country, and there's no reason to try and do that on a regional basis. You can't sell very effectively on a regional basis or a local basis if you happen to be in the cleaner business. And so you haven't really got anything in that case. And so you have to go back and start over, and you have to rethink it. So maybe you're a chemical company, or I've actually known people who invented cleaners, hand cleaners, and so forth. And these inventors, who are usually, you know, like wannabe chemists, they come up with these great things that work. They spend all of their time on whether or not the product works, which is important because that's the quality aspect of the diamond. But they forgot to see if they could get any market share, and so as a result, they fail anyway. But if you have a go, then you're finally ready to go to step 6. And in step 6, you can do your full financial analysis. And this is where you would complete a detailed expenses and figure out your direct costs so that you can, you know, identify your margins. You put together an actual break even. And oops, however you spell actual. And then you get your close estimates, and you put together of your indirect expenses, and then then you can begin to build this across time. So you might want to take a look at big changes in volume, like okay, you hope you can get 10 stores, and so you take a look at that. But what about 100 stores? What does that look like? Because your ultimate goal is to grow a little bit bigger, and not, or maybe that you want to grow a little bit bigger. And so instead of having 10, you have 100 stores or 1,000 stores. And then what does that do to your pro forma? Does it mean you need all kinds of new investment because you now need offices and computers, et cetera, et cetera? Or does it mean something different than that? And then we finally get to marketing planning. So what you've done here is by going all the way through number 6 in doing the financials, and then you've realized that you've got a business that could work if you do everything right and your assumptions are correct on your forecasting. You've actually got a business here that could actually work. And then you have to see if you have enough money to do it. Of course, you're doing your cash flow in here. Where did I put that? There, but you should have this. Oh, here it is. Build a pro forma, spelled correctly again. Cash flow and an income statement. And that way you'll determine if you're going to run out of money and if you have enough working capital. So now you're to that magic point where you're going, I think I'm going to start the business, but you're not ready yet because you haven't built a marketing plan. And so that's what will be our subject for next week is, okay, we've made the go decision. Now we're going to do it, but how do we actually build a plan that will work? And then we'll go through all of that. So that's what I've got for today. Questions, comments, discussion?
Emotional outburst, maybe.
Emotional outburst. Okay. Not sure how.
All right.
But
I first of all, I want to thank you for those grabs about the market. I've seen that one about 6 months ago, 3 months ago with the if you're going to start a business today, this is what you need to focus on.
yeah.
I have that in a screenshot on my phone. I always go back, I think 2 months ago, I have to go back and look at it again and make sure that I have chosen that path. But it's almost, I'm just excited to this presentation is something that I think I needed to see again. Because when I first quit my job, I thought I had everything figured out, even though, and then COVID came and said, no, you don't. And even then I thought I had everything figured out.
Yeah.
And then you keep, and it's not until you actually in the mud trying to start your own business, you really realize what it is to start a business. And not a job like that. I didn't want to create myself a self-employed anymore. I want to create a business.
Right.
And it's not easy. A lot of the advice you get from people that never start a business, goes a little bit kind of like out the window. But
right.
I think it's always go back to throw it back inside the house and then not out the window and trying to go back and decipher what you threw out. So, but everything you said today, almost go back and look at it. And I know for sure that a lot of subconscious of the stuff that you mentioned before has helped me put together what I've put together so far. Yeah. I know it's not perfect, but I want to thank you for that. So there's my emotional outburst.
Thanks. Well, and I will admit that the businesses that I've started, I haven't done all of these steps in a formal way either necessarily. But I will say that at least the last several of them, I have done each one of these things in an informal way by thinking them all through at the very least, but also in most cases, taking a look at the real marketplace and identifying, okay, how many businesses are there? So, and for instance, when we started Red Fusion, and I've said this before, our goal was simply to be the best. Well, when we started it, we wanted to do a variety of things, but it turned out that being in the middle of the new website boom, we ended up seeming like a web company. And we did do a variety of things. We did full execution of planning, but most of our work was digital, as it turned out. And so, in terms of looking at real growth and building marketing plans, we just decided we were going to be this one thing for businesses in Redlands, and if we could dominate Redlands, we would be happy. And so we just simply took a look at, well, how many businesses are in Redlands and how big are they? And how many can we get? So out of 1,400 or something, could we get 100 or 200? That would be enough to be able to pay salaries and make a little bit of profit. And so that's where we started. And we were able to do that because we did go through and look at the numbers. And then we did take a look at the revenue because we knew we knew about how much revenue we could get per website. So those things did happen, and I did build spreadsheets of the numbers in order to determine if it made sense. And each step along the way, when we moved into an office, could we pay for it? When we tripled the size of the office, could we pay for it? those kinds of questions. And so as you have these benchmarks come along, you kind of sit down again and you look at the numbers again and say, okay, are they realistic? And can we build to this next level? And then you end up with a spreadsheet that gets more and more sophisticated. Any other comments?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for all this, Ron. I mean, I myself have actually went through all these steps in a way, my own way, not formally, but I tend to stumble a couple of steps. Like for the SB Industrial, the way my dad started the company, he just found the market niche and just grew out of that. He didn't do any of this other stuff.
Right.
And looking back at it, if he would have done these other things, I assume that his company would be a little more bigger than how it is. But it's still successful, which is great. So now with SB Industrial, I kind of have to move backwards and kind of get all these missing pieces within the business so that whenever it's the time to take the next step to grow the company or get a more piece of the market share, I have to get all this stuff ready. And now I'm also doing my own brand, the clothing brand that I'm doing. I did all these things, you startup company, because it is a startup company. I'm doing all these steps, but I tend to have trouble with the market acceptance as well as trying to get in front of my customer, my dream customer,
Right.
Trying to get my product in front of them, try to find them where they're at, find those little niches where they're at. Because I know the niche is just, I'm just struggling with trying to find them and having that brand awareness, you could say. And kind of it kind of goes back and forth. Like I totally understand everything how you say if you don't get to this step, well, you have to start to number one. That's exactly how I feel right now. It's like I'm doing all this stuff, preparing, analyzing, evaluating, and then I get to the part that I need to be, and it's not successful. So now I got to start all over.
Right.
So that's just my comment. But I thank you for give it to us in a more organized way.
Yeah. Well, that's a really good comment and good insight from you. And I want to be sure to mention that don't get discouraged because you do it 2 or 3 times and you come up with a no-go. As a matter of fact, when you're doing product development, you end up doing the same thing again and you almost never go. You can't find a product you're going to add to your product mix. So, this is where you get creativity and innovation in business. And that is when you do have a good sense for your marketplace and who your customers are, and you're now able to begin building products for them. but it's still really hard to do. So with the dairy, we I think, let's see, 2 years ago, we had planned on offering about 6, 7 new products that were going to be manufactured in the plant, and we ended up testing about 8 to 10 products that were variants of the others. And I think we introduced about 4. So that gives you an idea, but we thought about 20 or 30. And the way that we did that, it might be fun to go through that. The way that we did that is we started looking at adjacent products. You start with milk. And then you go to, you've got all the different kinds of milk. And then you can say, well, let's do cream. And then you say, well, maybe orange juice would work. And so you add an orange juice line. And then years later, you kind of go, wait a minute, I mean, maybe we should be doing lemonade as well as orange juice. And so you put in lemonade, and then that does well. And so that basically says, do we have room to be able to sell another flavored lemonade and not scavenge our lemonade business? You don't want to dilute the business you've already got. You want to enhance the total. So we messed around with some flavors. They felt comfortable with a raspberry lemonade. And so they came up with that. And that didn't work. We ended up doing raspberry tea after we started tea. So, then we moved into coffee and we moved into tea and cold brewed coffee. And so literally we have kind of carefully grown this, and we had this on a grid where we started working on the products that were closest to what the dairy products represent. And when we looked at them, we realized we were providing breakfast products, things you have at breakfast over and over and over again. And so we realized, well, maybe we should be looking at, lemonade. And that's not necessarily breakfast, but orange juice for sure. Then we actually looked at other juices. And so we got a locally juiced apple juice, and that's done well. And so it's just kind of continued to grow into to the point now to where we've got this full coffee and tea line that we're rebranding so that it's not really a dairy type product, but it's completely different product line, but it's exclusively available through the dairy. Nobody else can get it. And now we're into all kinds of meats, trying sausages and roast beef and different things that local producers are making. And of course, a full bread line, 2 basic breads and then a new specialty bread every month. It's just, that's exploded. So you start with milk, and then you realize you can do a lot of other things. But the ones that we were manufacturing, bread's not one of them. The ones that we were manufacturing, it took, maybe 6 weeks just to get the recipe right. And they did dozens and dozens of batches and tastings. And then when we finally got to one that everybody in the company felt was really right, then we would just pick one route, one single route that had maybe 120 to 200 people on it. We would offer to bring them that product for free. And then whoever wanted it could get it. And then they would have that product, and we would send them a survey right after they got it. And then they would tell us whether we achieved our goal or not. And so if they liked it, that was good. If they didn't like it, okay, maybe we made a mistake. But we also asked some questions like, okay, if you like this and you found it acceptable, would you buy it? It's a different question. And if you would buy it, how frequently would you buy it? Now you can do this in about 6 or 7 or 8 questions. It's really quick and easy. We got about 30% of, first of all, they felt obligated because we gave them free product. And so, in that case, we would get 60 or 80% return on the surveys. And so we would get a really nice sample of that particular route. We tried to pick a route that was typical of all of the routes. And then we could look at that and we could literally make a decision. Are we going to do this or not? But you see what we did is we quantified. We think we've got something that will work. We throw away 3/4 of them and we pick, or maybe 90%. We pick the one that we're going to give a try. We do a sample hoping that it will work. If it works, we calculate how many we can sell across the entire customer base. And then from that customer base, we can calculate the volume that we're going to sell and determine the break-even points. So we literally have about a 90 or 95% chance of making money before we launch the product because we did all the research ahead of time. So just remember, all of those failures that you do just means you're closer to the end.
Exactly.
because sometimes it feels like you're a long ways from the end and it's never going to happen. But now when you talk about doing a clothing line, that's a little different animal. It's not easy to test clothing. And so the best thing to do there is you're gambling. Now, where are you doing manufacturing?
Well, different parts, either Los Angeles. I'm using Chinese manufacturers currently.
Okay.
So what I kind of found, what's the best way to work for me is I kind of show people the designs of the product. So not really the material, or not the clothing itself, but the designs that are going to go onto the clothing.
Right.
And get the feedback there and get the research from there and seeing if people are liking these types of designs, if they like the message behind the designs. And if people are, if it's a positive feedback, then right. I want to get a small sample batch of clothing made and then distribute it out and see if they're liking the material now of the clothing side, the clothing part of it, if that's a go or not. But because of the situation that I have, I'm kind of starting small and trying to like how you mentioned earlier, try to take over Redlist, but try to take over the IE or try to cater to the IE only right now and seeing how everyone's liking the product, how they're liking the designs. And then after that, push out more to the West Coast or more even on the other side of the East Coast of the United States. But yeah, I try to do more with the designs and kind of use our research with the designs first.
Yeah, good. Yeah, so you're doing the right thing. I mean, you have to kind of mess with it just a little bit and see how it goes. There's another way to do that. When I was in the women's leather handbag business, and we made other leather goods, what we would do is we would put together just a sample. And because we had our own factory, we could just make one. And so we'd put together a sample and then we'd have women, get together, my wife and my partner's wife and, their friends. And we basically say, okay, how do you like them? What would you do? How would you change it? And they, very constructive, they would say, well, this pocket's too small to be useful. Or I don't really like the feel of the leather or this color or that, so you get that. And then what we were able to do is just to put together samples for salespeople. So we would build a line, because you have to build a whole line. So you might have as few as 10 and maybe as many as 30 in a, say, the fall line. And you get sales reps and they go out and they try to sell them to retailers. Well, if you don't get any sales, you don't order any product.
Yeah.
And if you do get some sales, then you just have to be aware that the delivery dates might be tough to do. When we were manufacturing them ourselves in Denver, we were able to build them immediately as soon as the order came in. But when we sold Nordstrom, and they completely buried us for like a month and a half, and we couldn't take any more orders. So it's sort of like, okay, if you're going to use that distribution system, which is an old-fashioned system, you can test, and most fashion people today don't actually do their orders because they have to go offshore in order to build them. They go to say New York or the LA Mart, and they set up, and then they literally use their orders to decide if they're going to manufacture them. So that gives you freedom. You just do a whole bunch of things. And if you can get enough buyers to look at it and get a response, then you're okay. But if you're selling to stores, they're expecting, they expect you to have a reputation and the financial wherewithal to actually deliver the goods.
Yeah, and right now I'm not on to that point yet. Eventually I want
Right.
to get there, but right now I'm starting just if someone wants to buy, they come straight to me. Right now, currently not really distributing to retailers.
Yeah. Now and then of course, going back to the basic startup thing that we talked about, if you really ought to consider digital. And so there are places that will do at least screen printing in a digital way. They don't do it digitally necessarily, but they get the orders and they build them, and then you can have them shipped directly. You have to work through partnerships with people like that. But boy, there are lots of people in Southern California that do this kind of thing. And so you find a good partner that can actually do that. And so you can have them build them on demand, so that you sell 5 or 10, they build 5 or 10. Now the price is going to be a little bit higher, but the way that you justify that is you do limited editions.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, and you sign them. So I don't know what your whole marketing concept is going to be, but I think that the trend is to be a fashion leader. You have to have a certain sense of fashion yourself in order to be. That's not exactly true. I mean, I knew some of the best designers I ever knew just looked like hippies, and that's not, but those are different times, but for the most part, you should be able to develop a brand that might include a personal signature on each one of your pieces. Now, that doesn't have to be your name. It doesn't have to be, a real person necessarily. It could be a fake person. But if you chose to do something like that, you could. And that's just something that, increases the value, and it helps mitigate the prices you have to get in order to be able to do custom work. So
Gotcha.
by the way, I don't know if you are interested in, if you're interested in doing artwork of like faces, but I have access to a guy who has an incredible tennis shoe line, and he does famous people on the shoes. He just draws them.
Oh,
And
okay.
he is just unbelievable.
Well, yeah,
So
I'm interested in the contact. I'm interested in all types of art and artists doing different types of things.
this guy is one of the best. He doesn't really do caricatures. They're really more lifelike, but he just does incredible work. The problem is you have to get licensing many times in order to use a famous person's likeness. I mean, he'd do Mick Jagger, for instance, and you'd look at it and go, oh my gosh, that's Mick Jagger. Even on the shoe, you could tell it was a Mick Jagger. Or he would do one where the two shoes together, made the full face.
Oh, okay.
And you're walking down. I mean, the guy was really creative, but he didn't have that desire to make the money. And you have to have the desire to make the money in order to be able to make these things work. If you just do it as an artist, you don't have the motivation to do all the work in order to make it successful. So
yeah, exactly.
well, that's cool. That's cool. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that develops.
Yeah, me too as well. It's a balance between the business and kind of having your why, to persuade the people to come into your brand and be liking your brand as well. Because the business part is not wanting to make money. I mean, that's just going to keep the ball rolling. And then the other aspect is, getting people persuaded to come and check out your brand, purchase something from the brand because they follow that same message or that same theme that you're putting out there.
Right, right. Well, one time it would be great if you could give us like an overview of the stuff you're doing and show us some of your designs.
Yeah, of course. Whenever you guys have time, probably
Okay.
next meeting or whenever. Yeah.
Okay,
Understand.
let's maybe plan for two or three meetings from now.
Okay, sounds great.
That would be fun. So I'll see what you're doing.
Christian,
Yeah.
I sent you and Ron and Eddie, I sent you an email of some of the I don't plan to monetize this. This is just me. This is my time off. I'd love to do art on digital art. This is my I sent you a picture of a portrait of my padrino that passed away on Monday. And
really?
I just sent you the email, my art piece, and I just do these for my own liking because this is how I blow up steam whenever I'm sad or happy. But I did this digital art piece, so every line is painted by hand, like not hand.
Really? Yeah.
Digital
I'm looking
hand.
at it. Okay. So
And
who is this guy, Sandoval?
He's my padrino. He's my godfather. He passed away from COVID on Monday.
Oh no!
2 Mondays ago.
This is the second one, huh?
Yeah, we're in the third family member from COVID.
Third. So he's in Mexico, right?
Yeah, he was a military man in Mexico. Great guy, one of the nicest people you're ever gonna meet. And so I built this just in my own way, appreciating spending time dedicated to people like him.
Yeah,
But
that's cool.
So I feel like every time somebody passes away, I normally try to do something like that, but I never really post this stuff. I just keep it to
great.
myself.
The only thing is that you have to be careful because when you get to be my age, it's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
But you got a few years to worry about that. Maybe you'll get a lot faster and you'll be able to really churn them out. One every day. So, okay, guys. Well, then, so next week we will be ready to get into marketing planning, and we're going to get into we've got into that a little bit in positioning, but we haven't really gotten into like the full bore. And this might take a few weeks to do it. So we'll see. It's normally a 7-session thing. It takes about 3 hours each. So I'll try to not repeat all of the stuff that we've done, but we'll go through the essentials and get some of the details that we haven't been able to do generally. So we'll spend a little more time doing it. So, okay, great. Hey, thank you all. It was great to see everybody. And so we'll all see you in a couple weeks.
All right. Thank you, Ron.
You bet.
All right, bye. Bye, Christian.
Bye,
Ron and Eddie. Mondays for meetings on the with my clients, it proved a little challenging on Mondays. I don't know if you got my email on that.
Yeah, I was thinking we might be able to do it tonight.
Oh, tonight?
Yeah.
If you or you guys are
Does that
okay
work
with
for
it?
you, Ed?
I'll give it a shot. Yeah. What time?
7 o'clock?
Okay, let's shoot for 7.
Or what
Okay.
works for you, Edgar? It doesn't matter to me. Anytime.
Yeah, really. What works for you, Edgar?
Tonight at 7, it's fine. I just feel like Mondays are the days that I go. Like I always get stuck in Ontario, Montclair every Monday, so it became like I feel bad to keep canceling. So I figured the thing is Mondays are just a bad day in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Tuesdays and Wednesdays seem to be a better time to meet. So if you guys want to meet today at 7, I think it would be a good time.
Okay,
right.
good. Good. We'll
Sounds
see you
good.
at 7 then.
Thanks,
See you
guys.
guys at 7.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Sounds good. See you.